Today we dive into the mechanics, politics, and implications of this unprecedented security proposal, drawing on reporting from Axios and decades of historical defense arrangements. We examine how Israel's push for a 20-year memorandum of understanding tied to a narrative crafted for the Trump era could reshape U.S.-Israel relations for a generation. We're joined by Mr. Ihab Omar, writer and journalist at Al Ahram newspaper from Cairo. So, good afternoon to you, Mr. Ihab. And let me here start by asking, why is Israel pushing now for a 20-year framework, doubling the duration of previous MOUs?
Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for having me. Since 1998, a new system has controlled the Israeli-US relationships with a 10-year military cooperation agreement, which includes giving Israel everything it needs of equipment and weapons, which ensures the Israeli excellence and superiority above the neighboring states. This is under the administration under Bill Clinton, and then in 2008 with the Republican President George Bush Jr. And the irony is that the third agreement took place in 2016 and not 2018 under the Democratic Barack Obama, and as there was a concern in 2016 that Donald Trump might actually evade this system in his brain, and that's why it was the agreement was signed earlier in 2016. The next agreement must be signed in 2026. Here, Israel, as you have stated in the introduction, does not want a 10-year memorandum to end in 2030, but in 2046, Israel this time wants a 20-year deal. This in the light of the Israeli concern from the changing nature of the United States of America, and new currents are now evolving, not completely in line with the Israeli American support, ongoing and unhindered support. And the idea of Israel being the 51st state of the United States is now highly rejected inside the United States, and now a lot of people in the United States see that Israel is not very used to the United States, which means that the U.S. Liberty ship, which was bombed in 1969, is that Israel is not an ally, it's an enemy. This also is going to dig deeper into the nuclear issue that started in Israel without U.S. approval, and now some are accusing Mossad of assassinating John Kennedy in 1963, and as well as the U.S. activist who was assassinated a couple of weeks ago. A lot of accusations now are being directed towards Israel. Now we are seeing a new intellectual trend, liberated trend, free of the Zionist lobby, seeing that Israel is not actually of very good use to the U.S. national security. Some even are looking at it from a religious aspect, that there are a lot of discrepancies between Christianity and Judaism, as this new trend is more inclined to Christianity, which is more prevailing in the United States. Some are now seeing even that Islam is more closer to Christianity than Judaism, and that Muslims are more loyal to the United States when it comes to comparison. And Egypt was mentioned by name in this regard, that it has never tampered with the national security of the United States of America, or the Gulf states are now supporting the United States in terms of energy, power, and economy. So the issues are being reviewed again, and they are saying that Israel is a sin of the U.S. foreign affairs, and that is not a worthy ally for the United States of America,
Right.
and it's not worthy of all the successive support from the successive U.S. administration, from Truman to Trump. And Israel is now concerned with the variables. There is a growing concern inside Israel that there will be a more powerful trend inside Israel
Exactly.
loyal to the United States than Israel, and that's why they are trying to make this connection through a long-term agreement for a 20-year
Yes,
period.
indeed, Mr. Omar, we're speaking here about a new current that is arising in the horizons of the United States. To what extent, when we return to this stage, this stage of the United States, to what extent could Israel's proposal influence the Trump administration's broader alignment of the U.S. global commitments?
Of course, the MAGA trend and the far right inside the Republican Party, all of these trends inside the US administration already are able to change Trump's policies to more isolation from Israel, and not taking more decisions for the best interest of Israel, but for the best interest of the US national security. Trump was always a supporter of Benjamin Netanyahu since the beginning of his first reign, and then we have found that in last October the US administration and Donald Trump were convinced with the Egyptian vision for peace represented in the Sharm el-Sheikh summit, as it was the best interest of the United States, and it wasn't to support Netanyahu in continuing the massacre in the Gaza Strip. And therefore Israel is very, very concerned from Trump himself and his reign, and that 3 years are still ahead, and these years would carry a review of the US policy towards Israel, which will damage the US aspiration to expand politically and geographically in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and Iran.
Right.
And absolutely, there is an Israeli growing concern from the current US administration, and that's why Netanyahu is seeking very quickly to sign this deal as soon
Yes.
as possible.
Yes, very clear, Mr. Omar. We are now joined by Ms. Ginger Chapman, a lawyer and political analyst from Washington. A pleasure having you, Ms. Chapman, as always. And let me here ask you, from Washington's perspective, what does a 20-year defense agreement signal about Israel's long-term strategic expectations from the United States?
Well, thank you for having me today, Mona, and greetings to your viewers and to your other guests. And what we are seeing here is this is a desperation on the part of Israel, on the part of Netanyahu. They are pushing for this 20-year memorandum of understanding now because they are aware that in 2026, when this current memorandum is expired, there will be no political will in the United States for providing $4 billion plus a year every year for Israel's welfare, Israel's military programs. So one thing that is unusual is this is the first time this memorandum of understanding has really become an issue. And this highlights the growing dissatisfaction on the part of not just the American people, but on the part of Congress and people within the administration towards Israel's behavior, Israel's wars of aggression, and also as the American people have found out more details that the American people are subsidizing health care, college education, as well as monthly monthly family benefits for families who do nothing for the United States. They are just receiving American subsidies by virtue of the fact that their government has negotiated one-sided deals with the
Mm-hmm.
United States.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot. Also, as we find out more about the economic workings of this deal, essentially we pay this lump sum to Israel at the beginning of every year, and then they invest the 4 billion in US treasuries, and then the United States pays them interest on the treasuries they have used the money to buy. So we give them the money, they use that money to buy the treasuries, and then we pay them interest on the treasuries, and then we forgive the loan. So we're essentially making these one time, or every year is a lump sum loan that we are making that we then forgive. And the reason we forgive the loan is because if we gave this money to Israel as a grant, then we could have oversight as to how they spend it. So,
Yes, Ms. Chapman, we're speaking here about Jewish, and Jewish were always the best businessmen and bankers. Um, if I may ask you here, how does introducing an America First clause alter the political narrative around foreign aid in today's American climate?
well, one thing we are seeing is that the term America First is becoming a political rallying cry in America. And this is quite remarkable. This is a phenomenon we've never seen before, where for the first time, Israel is viewed as a foreign interloper who is acquiring a great deal of subsidies, assistance for America, from which we are getting nothing in return. And we do see our politicians are now arguing over America First versus Israel First. We have people taking sides within the Republican Party who are saying that Israel First, make Israel great again, is now hindering and indeed detrimental to America First, make America great again. This is causing a great rift within the within the Republican Party. It has also caused the Democrats to completely fall away from Israel, other than a few lone Democrat voices, such as John Fetterman, Senator Fetterman. However, there is an increasing acrimony and resistance within the United States towards the ongoing unconditional support that America has given Israel. This
Mm.
is no longer politically tenable for President Trump, and it is causing deep divisions. And this, the push by Netanyahu to get a 20-year memorandum rather than the 10-year, may be one of the tipping points or the straw that broke the camel's back that is causing Americans to increasingly examine our relationship with the state of Israel and the damage that it is doing to American civil society, as well as the damage it's doing to our international reputation and ultimately our economy.
Right. Ms. Omar, historically, Israel has relied on three major long term agreements: the 1998, the 2008, and the 2016. Now, how does the new proposal compare in direction and intent?
It's entirely different, of course, away other from the 20-year period compared to 10-year, but there are a lot of demands that Israel is proposing from the US military system. Israel is getting prepared as if it is getting ready for a world war, because Netanyahu spoke about it clearly that Israel will turn into a permanently um, fighting state, and Netanyahu's assistants or the far right officials are always talking about future wars with most of the region states. So we are facing a new type of colonial craziness, and the US administration is not now not having this type of colonial wave again, because it's not simply in its best interest. Providing Israel with this volume of weapons will lead to an explosion in the Middle East. And for those who think that war can be concluded with these weapons is delusional, because Israel has a long-term agenda in the Gaza Strip. They failed to take full control over it. So eventually these weapons will lead to further and more problems for the United States and for its interest in the regions. And in the meantime, Israel will not succeed in its purposes. So it's a failed investment to provide Israel with anything anymore. It might be a warning to the United States of America and the weapon manufacturers in the United States that it is a waste of money, a waste of investment, and waste of weapons, whether from the private or the public sector. Sending such weapons for 20 years to Israel will not result in any positive results to the United States or the national security of the United States, but the US interests will be uh, completely and severely damaged, and will increase the complexity of the situation, and it will also harm the president and the White House, whether from the Republican or the Democratic or from the neoliberal America. It will not serve the United States whatsoever. This open,
Right.
unconditional support to Israel. Uh,
Yes, yes, very clear. Ms. Chapman, let me get back to you here. And how significant is the shift from direct military aid to increased allocation for joint US Israeli research and development?
Yes. Well, this shift to less direct military aid and uh, phrasing or covering the aid as research development. We do know that a significant portion of the aid is going to go to Israeli aggression, Israeli military development, and also recharacterizing the aid does not make it more palatable to Americans. And this is because we have recently found out that in addition to the annual aid we give them, during COVID, former President Biden issued multi-billion-dollar COVID aid packages to Israel. And then just this year, Americans found out that in the past 2 years, Gaza, Yemen, air defense, and now we are shocked with the sudden announcement that the United States wants to build a military base in Gaza, on Israel area of Gaza, which is not transparent at all, this description. And this base is going to cost $500 billion, essentially it will cost $500 billion before they even break ground, which means the expenses will be even greater. And what Americans are seeing is a constant drain of American money towards Israel for a variety of purposes, but which always seem to go towards military aggression, towards endless wars against neighbors, and essentially the quantities of money and the control that the Israeli lobbyists have over the American budgeting process is reaching a point where Americans are examining this, and Americans are actively resisting this. And it does appear that President Trump is going to be experiencing a great deal more resistance from not just Democrats, but also Republicans as he tries to move forward with these deals. They are becoming more closely examined, especially because America is on the financial brink. Right now, we are experiencing Americans who cannot afford health insurance. Electricity bills are an issue because of the the issue with skyrocketing electricity bills due to green energy initiatives. And then, as we've seen, Americans just were informed, to our great shock, that 42 million Americans are on food stamps because they cannot afford groceries. Even people with jobs cannot afford groceries. So we are seeing America on the financial brink and unraveling financially as we are committing to spending and sending more and more American taxpayer dollars to Israel. This is actually becoming a political football. We are seeing high-ranking Republicans, Marjorie Taylor Greene, as well as journalists, Tucker Carlson, are now engaged in a very high-profile public battles with traditional conservatives such as Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz, Mark Levin from Fox News, and we are essentially seeing the Israel issue tear apart America socially, politically, and now it appears also financially. And these are issues that are going to come back and harm President Trump and the Republican Party as they become more exposed.
Right. Mr. Omar, how has the Trump administration's approach differed from previous U.S. administrations regarding military aid to Israel?
In fact, when it comes to the military assistance to Israel, even with Ukraine, he was very clear that there will be no open aid or open support deals. Everything will be censored, and he did not just grant approvals. Trump came with a policy of minimizing the U.S. debt and the U.S. Foreign aid, and he made Israel an exception, but not very much of an exception, because he needed to achieve gain inside the United States with the MAGA trend and the national right. So the military aid in the Donald Trump reign is not the same as the Joe Biden support to Israel. As well, we have seen the rift between Netanyahu and Trump. And for instance, in the first month of his reign, there was a lot of support, but now there is a lot of accountability and approval processes when it comes to providing support or aid. And he's now also cooperating with different states in the Middle East for a peaceful solution for the Iranian issue, and not going for a second war between Iran and Israel. He's resorting to other parties. I see that the Trump support to Israel is more reasonable compared to previous years, especially George Bush Jr. or President Joe Biden. Both of them provided unlimited support, very generous support to Israel. Both of them have issued statements that they have Zionist tendencies, and all of this was very harming to the peace process in the Middle East and for the U.S. interests in the Middle East, as well as its relationship with the allies.
Right. Back to you, Ms. Chapman. And the MAGA base, even the MAGA base, has shown growing hostility towards foreign assistance. Now, how might this opposition shape congressional debates about this deal?
My apologies, I didn't catch the audio. Could you repeat the first part of the question, Ms. Mona?
Right. I'm saying that even the MAGA base have already shown growing hostility towards the foreign assistance to Israel. Now, how might this opposition shape congressional debates about the deal?
Well, it's not just foreign assistance to Israel. The American people are seeing our President Donald Trump making aggressive moves towards Venezuela. We are sending aircraft carriers, Marines, landing gear to the Caribbean offshore Venezuela. We are also seeing increased military activity in other parts of the world. We are still trying to resolve the issues with the missiles we are sending Ukraine, NATO payments. So the American people see that President Donald Trump, rather than bringing an era of peace, a golden era of common sense, we are seeing increasing military activity from the United States. We're
Right.
seeing troops mobilized, and so also sending 200 soldiers to Israel, the prospect of sending more troops as far as to
So
staff
we're
military
speaking.
bases.
Uh, I'm sorry because our time is running out. But yes, very clear, Ms. Ginger. We're speaking here about lots and lots of commitments the U.S. is putting itself in. We'll have to wait and see what will happen in this deal. Ms. Ginger Chapman and Ms. Ihab Omar, thank you so much for your insightful and valuable analysis. We appreciate both of you for joining us here in this very complicated and evolving story. That brings us to the end of today's episode for In Depth. Many thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.